Hello and welcome to another episode of Statford Bridge Chelsea by the numbers. The numbers on this one, just okay. But, for Goodison away in the middle of a hurricane, we'll take just okay. Chelsea drew 0-0 away to Everton in what was one of the more frustrating matches that we played this year. Chelsea lost this match last year 2-0, did not play particularly well. I don't think Chelsea played particularly well in this one either. 1.2 to 1 XG, 12 shots to 5, 3 big chances, 2 big chances. I think that's a kind of weird summary of the game, but Chelsea didn't generate a tremendous amount of box shots. And kind of the big takeaway from this game statistically for me is that this is the first time all season that I think Chelsea have been really, really unable to turn a whole bunch of field tilt into a whole bunch of good shots and box entries and touches and all that sort of stuff. Over half of Chelsea's XG comes from 2 chances, and they come on the same possession. Jackson gets a square from Cole Palmer in transition. Keeper Pickford makes a decent save. It's kind of right at him, but it's a decent save. And Malo Gusto follows up the rebound and puts it over. And that's basically, in terms of really good chances, everything. There's another a chance for Jackson off a set piece that hits the post. Other than that, a whole lot of nothing, if I'm honest. And there's a few interesting tactical things we can talk about that Sean Dyche did to make this a difficult game for Chelsea. But I think ultimately, one of the big things that I think people are going to take away from this is, Chelsea struggle against low blocks. Chelsea struggle against low blocks. Look at Everton's games. 0-0, 0-0. Don't concede. Okay, one game. 0-0, 0-0. Concede 1, concede 1. Nil, don't concede. Don't concede. Like, Everton are a very, very good defensive team. And I think it's kind of important to not get carried away with the takeaways from that game, in that Chelsea did struggle to break them down. That is objectively true. At the same time, we can go back and look at the prior games this season against teams who have defended deeply. Chelsea have not struggled against teams who have defended deeply. They killed Crystal Palace. They killed West Ham. They killed Forest. They killed Leicester until Leicester started to press. When Leicester chose to defend deep, they killed them. The teams who have tried to defend deep against Chelsea, Brentford, they killed Brentford until they run out of gas in their press late. The teams who have tried to defend deeply against Chelsea this year have largely not been that good. And I'm going to edit this live because you can deal with it. But Chelsea have really not struggled against teams who have defended deeply. And there's been like one main approach that Chelsea have kind of struggled with. And I think now is probably the optimal time to just go to the tactics board. What Chelsea have struggled with at times this season is when teams defend with 5, leaving the ability for wingbacks to pressure wingers aggressively and force them backwards. That has been one thing that Chelsea have struggled with. And that was not how Everton approached this game. Everton played a 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, whatever you want to call it in this game. But really, the significant change in this game is that what we have seen teams have trouble with is that when Chelsea find their box, and in this game, Chelsea found their box midfield with Malo Gusto becoming the left 10. Didn't really work. We can talk about that. We probably won't, because I don't think there's much to say other than he just cannot execute in those positions. What we have seen is that teams end up doing something like having someone man Mark Palmer and then twisting their midfield and their 9 into a 4-4-2 to go 4v4 with strikers on the 6s, 8s marking 10s. And it doesn't work when you end up like this, because you can go middle center back to the 9 all the time. And if you go, we're going to have the 6 is going to screen the 9, then you have Gusto roll out, and you get to do things like wide center back into Palmer in the opposite channel, and you can't defend it. Like it's too difficult to maintain the distances there. However, what we saw this time was very concerted effort to keep the ball away from Levi Colwill. It didn't really work. Like if we look at the mark stats progression bots, Colwill got a whole lot of pitches on the passes. So did Disasi, so did Tosin. But they tried a little bit to keep it away from Colwill. They would have the 8s jump to the 6s. And what we've seen a lot with this is like, oh, you have like the winger try and snipe from the outside center back, and it becomes difficult to progress. Instead, Everton brought their wingers low to manage the 10s, so that whenever Palmer tried to roll out, this is a very easy movement for the winger. They're not worried about that. Where if Gusto tries to roll out, you bring the winger, and it's fine. This is not a scary situation for you. And so what we saw a lot was Chelsea's best actions often came from being able to get this action, so going center back straight to Jackson to bounce for Palmer. We got a few of those that looked pretty good. Some transition stuff. Caicedo had an excellent regain for Neto, which created Chelsea's best chance of the game. But we didn't get a whole lot of Palmer in the pocket in the final third. We didn't get a whole lot of the other part of this being that with the wingers so deep, when the lines are a lot further, and you end up in these situations where you want to get Sancho 1v1 against the fullback, or you want to get Neto 1v1 against the fullback, because it's the winger tracking the double 10s and not the 8s, so the wingers aren't high, it was very easy for the winger to come double up and the 8 sink in to kill the 10, and Chelsea just end up having to pass it in a vague U-shape around the team forever. And if we look at things like the McClockbot map, you can see Chelsea did a whole lot of passing between the back 5 and very little passing between the attacking players. They were never really able to get to Palmer in the pocket, get Gusto in good spots, find Jackson, Sancho, Neto, whoever you want, in those really good pocket places. Because once you get into the final third and you get to the winger, and Chelsea have used those wingers as players who don't turn the ball over and who establish Chelsea's ability to get numbers into the box and get connections inside through passes or through dribbles. They couldn't do it because you get into the situation and every 1v1 is not a 1v1, it's a 1v2. And even if Gusto makes the run into the channel, they just pop off and you still have help inside, so you can't dribble. And it was very, very difficult for Chelsea's wingers. I got a lot of tweets about, I thought Sancho and Neto were terrible. And I think it's very difficult to decouple that. Yes, it is true that Neto takes 2 shots of basically terrible quality. He doesn't really create anything. He doesn't really turn it over much either. Sancho takes 1 shot. He doesn't really create anything. He doesn't really turn it over either. It's easy to look at that and say they played poorly. But I think in the tactical context of the game, really hard to decouple that maybe they didn't execute super well, but they also got nothing. They got no change from Everton. So I think that is really the big story of the game. And I think what's interesting now is the Premier League is a copycat league. If things work for you, teams will take it. And this is the first time all season that I've looked at it and said, okay, this didn't work. And particularly, this is the first time all season where I've come out of a second half being like, that is objectively bad. Chelsea were terrible in the second half. Only 4 shots, only 1 inside the box. They give up 2 huge chances the other way. Not that they were giving up a tremendous amount in transition, but they were just really poor in the second half. And I thought that the only real tactical tweak we saw was that Enzo became one of the double pivot players. Sorry, Malo Gusto became one of the double pivot players, and Enzo went into the pocket. Didn't work because it was the same issue. He's not getting on the ball in good enough spots. And so he's becoming a channel runner because he can't get the ball. But because he's a channel runner and it's Enzo Fernandez, it's not someone who's really threatening into depth. You don't get anything. And I think where that takes us is the tweak that I had hoped to see and we didn't see, and this is going to parlay into a larger conversation about substitutions, is that we did not see João Felix and Christopher Nkunku come on in attacking midfield roles until quite late, if at all. João Felix didn't come on at all. Christopher Nkunku came on as a 9. Madueke came on for Neto. And I think what really surprised me is we did not see Chelsea go to a look where you have a 9 and you put 3 players in the pocket. Whether that's Palmer and Madueke and Felix, or Palmer and Nkunku and Felix, or whatever your mix of players is. But I was very surprised they didn't try and get another number into the pocket and say, look, it's 0-0. Yes, a draw away at Goodison is not an awful result. But at the same time, and I've said this a few times on the podcast and elsewhere, the 2 points gained by winning a drawed game is twice as big as the 1 point loss. So all you have to hit is 1 out of 3 times you need to score. And it's even less than that because sometimes you tie. Like if you win 1 out of 3, tie 1 out of 3, and lose 1 out of 3, it is an objectively positive decision to make every single time. And I think like you look at the game and you say, Chelsea have good players. Felix is a useful player and Nkunku is a useful player. Guiu in that, not that I thought they should have brought Guiu on, but you look at like the mess that game was with the weather and the Everton of it all. Like maybe you can make those decisions. And you can take those risks to go win the game. Maybe it is you bring Tyreek George to juice your wingers. I thought Jadon Sancho looked dead the last 20 minutes of the game. This is a guy who has completed exceedingly few 90s in the past 2 years. It's tough to play 90 minutes. And it's tough to play 90 minutes at the pace that Chelsea played at. If we look at the Mark Stat spot, Chelsea had a PPDA of 4. So to describe that for you, if you are unfamiliar with the PPDA metric, PPDA stands for passes per defensive action. That means in Everton's first 40 yards of the pitch, they would complete 4 passes and then hoof the ball or turn it over. So if you think about this, from a goal kick, Jordan Pickford passes it to a center back. The center back passes it to a fullback. The fullback gets pressured, passes it back to the center back, who passes it back to Jordan Pickford, who then kicks the ball as far away as he can. That was the average, not even bad, the average Everton build. They had an extremely low build-up completion rate. Chelsea had a very high one, all those sorts of things. It is, and the point of this is not to say that I thought Chelsea's press was great. It was not. I don't think it was. But it was very active. It was very intense. It is really, really, really hard. It is so hard to play at that intensity for an extended period of time. And we said this last week with the Brentford game that Chelsea were really good for 65 minutes, and then they ran out of gas and Brentford made subs, and then they died on the vine the last third of the game and hung on. And Everton did not get so much that I would classify the end of this game hanging on. But if you look at Chelsea in the yellow, the first 45 minutes is all Chelsea. And you get to about 60 minutes, and Chelsea just slowly fade away and stop creating anything of note. They had not a tremendous amount of ball wins. They had a very low number of box entries for them. All of the things. Just not a great performance. And it was a little bit disappointing to see few subs again. And I went and looked to see kind of week by week how the sub stuff is trending. And if you look week by week, Chelsea are going down in total sub minutes played every game. A former recruitment person told me a story that they when they were working for like a well-known analyticsy club. I won't say who, but they were telling me that one of the things they do to make their coaches sub, because the literature and the research and all says subbing more is better, they incentivize the coaches to sub more. So if your subs play more than 100 minutes in a game, you get a bonus for the game. And so I look at this and I go, well, Enzo Maresca's not getting very many bonuses. And if you think about it, in a 5-sub world, to get to 100 minutes played is very easy. If you make 3 subs at the 60th minute, or you make 2 subs at the 60th minute and 2 subs at the 80th minute, you're getting to 100. You're getting to 100, or you're getting awfully close. And what we have seen is that Enzo Maresca is pretty willing to sub when we're losing, pretty willing to sub when we're winning, and he's very peppy about not subbing when the game is quote-unquote fine. And I don't like it. I don't like it at all. And I think it opens up some very difficult conversations. Not difficult conversations, but difficult moments for the rest of the Christmas period, where you look now at the matches Chelsea play. Fulham are a real team. Like, Fulham are not slouches. If I go to the league table, Fulham are a real team. They're a comfortably top half expected goal difference team. They are one of the best defensive teams in the league. This is a hard game to play. They have been in good form. Like, this is not an easy game to play if you are Chelsea. And now you go into this game where everybody is deep on minutes. Everybody is deep. Palmer is deep on minutes. Jackson is deep on minutes. Colwill is deep on minutes. Caicedo, Enzo, your wingers, Tosin, and you have injuries. Fofana is out. James is out. Barishile is out. You have actual constraints to who you can pick now, and now they're tired. And I've said this, but again, I think there's like weird personnel decisions. Like, Everton are playing Mikalenko at right back or at left back, who's not exactly a bomb-on fullback, but he's also not very good defensively. Like, why is Nani Madueke not playing this game so that Neto can play Fulham to track Anthony Robinson, who is one of the best attacking left-backs in the league? That seems like a more natural way to set up who you want to play. And then you go into the exact same thing where you get to play, then you come back to going Madueke against Ipswich, who are going to let you attack Leif Davis, who is very good going forward but cannot defend. Like, that to me is a thing I look at and I'm like, the planning here doesn't make sense to me. At the same time, even beyond the planning, from a sub perspective, if you have 2 games, let's say you have exactly 22 players, you have A team, B team, like kind of what Chelsea have done this year. If your choice is play the A team 90 minutes, then play the B team 90 minutes, you are going to get worse outcomes than if you play the A team for 60 minutes, sub on the B team for 30, then play the B team for 60 minutes and sub on the A team for 30. You are going to get worse results. And I will just keep saying it, the drop-off in quality is smaller than the drop-off in physical application as players get tired. It is objectively true. And I think this is like a big thing. And Enzo Maresca was very not subby for Leicester last year, and they got away with it because they were better than everybody. And I think there's lots of worlds where Jackson scores his big chance in the first half, and Chelsea go up 1-0, and they pass the air out of the ball, and that's how the game ends. And Chelsea win 1-0, and we're talking about what a professional, mature performance, away to Goodison, All of those things are true, but I think there is room for growth still. At the same time, Chelsea lose this one last year. They are on pace now for, I think, I closed it earlier, but I think they're on pace for 79. I think that's aggressive. I don't think we will get to 79. And if you look at the next kind of stretch of games. It's now Fulham, Ipswich, Palace, Bournemouth. You won all 4 of those last year. And again, I said this before going into the holiday period of Brentford, Everton, so on, that I would be quite surprised if Chelsea won all these games. And I think there are a few games that kind of in this stretch, you're probably a little bit fortunate to come away with wins in all of them. But it's one of those things, like, if you can keep winning, you keep putting distance between yourself and Villa and Spurs, who are not great. Like, Villa have Newcastle and Brighton their next 2 games. That's a really tough set of games. Spurs lost to Liverpool, so actually this is even worse, and I didn't even update it for them. Like, you're 20 points ahead of Spurs and Villa in the season projections. You have a lot of room for top 4 to get away with it. And Spurs have Forest after that, and then Newcastle, and then Arsenal. Like, it's not... Everybody plays everybody at the end of the day. But I would love for Chelsea to learn and implement things and grow, and let's see. Because I think the in-game adjustments from Resk have been pretty good. I think in general the rotation has been pretty good. But I would be pretty disappointed if a few injuries and no more Conference League turned into I'm riding the same 13 guys every game and I'm not going to sub. I'd be pretty disappointed. That would be a pretty... Not a red flag, because I think from Reska to be fired at the end of the year would be catastrophic failure from here. Like, you'd have to, I don't know, go on an insane losing run. However, it would be certainly not a green flag. It would be a pretty sizable red flag, I think. And again, I don't look at Chelsea's bench and say, like, I'm not clamoring for Renato Vega, but I think you can play João Felix, and I think you can play Tyreek George, and I think you can play Nkunku. Like, I don't even whatever about the other guys. I think you can play them to go and win the game, and I think that's worthwhile. Anyways, that's where we're going to cut it today. I'll see you all on Boxing Day for Fulham at home. As always, enjoy the soccer.